Welcome, welcome, welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 484 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast. Now that I asked you to agree with me, I'm asking you to hear me out. What's one thing that is said a lot? It is said that championships are built through regular season habits. The habits, the things that you build in the regular season has a direct effect on if you win a Super Bowl, if you win an NBA championship. If you win a championship, championships are built in the regular season. And that statement couldn't be more true when you look at the season that the Philadelphia Eagles had compared to the season that the Kansas City Chiefs had. Before I go any further, let me congratulate the Philadelphia Eagles for winning this year's Super Bowl, beating the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22. Now, it was a dominant performance. It felt like the Eagles were just on a different stratosphere once they got off the bus. The physicality, the execution, it was perfect. It felt like the Eagles could do no wrong. Now, when you look at 40-22, you think, damn, that game got out of hand fast. And surprising as it is, I'll say the first quarter, Kansas City Chiefs defense played really well. It was a back and forth. I think at the end of the first quarter, it was 7-0 Philly. The Kansas City Chiefs defense was playing. In fact, as shocking as it is, I will say probably up until 5-6 minutes going into, 5-6 minutes left in the second quarter, I would say Kansas City Chiefs defense was playing extremely well. Now, you're probably saying, Jalen, how the hell were they playing well? And they were down 24-7 or 24-0 going into half. And that's kind of where my statement that the habits that you build in the regular season directly correspond with if you're a championship caliber team or not. What has been the chatter surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs all year? The chatter surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs has been, they look shaky. Their offensive line isn't that good. In fact, statistically, they had one of the worst offensive lines in football majority of the season. They were winning these close games. And while some will look at it and say, oh, they're gritty wins, they find a way to win, others look at it and say, well, if it wasn't for a blocked field goal, if it wasn't for a Raiders blunder, if it wasn't for a late game interception, their record will look very different. We talked about the weapons, how, not having Rashid Rice throughout the whole year, but you still have Xavier Worthy, but he's still a rookie. Travis Kelce hasn't looked great all year. These are all the habits that was being built up throughout the year for the Kansas City Chiefs. While, yes, they were winning. But there's a difference between convincing wins and just scraping by wins. And it felt like the Kansas City Chiefs all year we're getting just winning by the skin of their teeth. Now, again, a win is a win is a win is a win, but not wins are created equally. I said this, and I've said this a lot. Winning blinds you from what's reality. Winning is able to blind you from what you really need to be focused on. While, yes, everyone that looked at the Kansas City Chiefs knew their offensive line was a problem. Knew they didn't, outside DeAndre Hopkins and Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce has not has turned himself into an unreliable option for the Kansas City Chiefs, at least this year and a little bit last year. Hollywood Brown came back late, so he's still trying to get his rhythm. Isaiah Pacheco came back late, so he's still trying to get his rhythm. There's a reason why a lot of people, in fact, I'll say it like this. The reason why a lot of people picked the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game wasn't because, outside of Kansas City Chiefs fans, wasn't because they were so confident that this is a dominant team. Not because the Kansas City Chiefs showed that championship pedigree week after week after week in the regular season. Not because they just look like a juggernaut. They picked them either because A, they didn't want to see the Eagles win. That was me. Or B, they had the best player in football in Patrick Mahomes. While he may not have had the best season, he is unequivocally the best player in football. But if you just look at the regular season habits, why is my hoodie going crazy right now? Lord have mercy. There we go. If you look at the regular season habits, nothing outside of their win-loss record would have had you think that this team, I'll say this, and their defense. Their defense was really good with Chris Jones and Kalafkis. Their defense was really good, which goes back to my first point. The defense came to play at least the first half of the game. Again, 24-7 doesn't look like the defense showed up, but the defense played well. It was poor offense and untimely penalties from the defense. They'll have a huge third down stop that gets negated by a penalty. That gets negated by a stupid roughing the passer or a stupid unnecessary roughness. In fact, I would say that everything we saw and every issue that the Kansas City Chiefs had all year permeated itself and reared its ugly head this game. Kansas City Chiefs was prone this whole year to have slow starts offensively, which is why the defense was so highlighted, because they needed to show up. Their offense would be bad a lot of games. And they'd have one or two big plays here and there in the third or fourth quarter, which would help them gain the lead or whatever. But they didn't have it was very rare that the Kansas City Chiefs had a complete game. I think their most complete game, and one of the few complete games they had, was against the Buffalo Bills last week, or in the AFC Championship. Well, yeah, that's all good and dandy when you're playing the Raiders, when you're playing the Denver Broncos, when you're playing the Houston Texans, but you're in the Super Bowl. You can't get off to a slow start, especially with a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to get to them in a second. Trust me, I know that I'm spending a lot of time on the losing team. But I'm, as much as it's going to pain me, I'm going to give the Philadelphia Eagles their shine. This Super Bowl was lost in the regular season. Again, outside of Kansas City Chiefs fans, no one really had confidence that this Kansas City Chiefs team was going to three-peat because of all the habits that we've seen them develop in the regular season. The biggest saving grace they had was their defense and having Patrick Mahomes. And we've seen Patrick Mahomes do less with, or do more with less. But Every negative habit that the Kansas City Chiefs developed over the regular season, we saw in the Super Bowl. They lost because of their offensive line play. Their offensive line could not contain the Philadelphia Eagles to save their life. Patrick Mahomes was sacked 6 times, and a lot of those wasn't on Patrick Mahomes. I know that stats don't tell the whole story, but a lot of those 6 sacks that Patrick Mahomes had or was faced was not on him. It was he literally just didn't have time. And then you have some look at the end of the game. Later on in the show, I'm going to do winners and losers of the NFL season. I'm going to do 5 winners. I'm going to do 5 losers. And one thing that I hate is when you abandon something sooner than you have to. Not only did the Kansas City Chiefs abandon the run, they didn't even utilize it. They had 11 between Patrick Mahomes, Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine, and Isaiah Pacheco. They had 11 rushes. Now, I understand how vaunted this Philadelphia Eagles defense is, but to make yourself that one-dimensional, especially when you know how poor your offensive line is crazy to me. This was one of the first games I've seen where it felt like the great Andy Reid and the great Spagnuolo was outcoached. Shouts out to the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff. It didn't seem like – it seemed like the only answer that the Kansas City Chiefs had all night during the Super Bowl was, hey, yo, Patrick Mahomes, save us. Travis Kelce had, 4 catches for 39 yards. Xavier Worthy had 8 catches for 157 yards, but outside of that, DeAndre Hopkins, 2 catches, 18 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster, 2 catches, 16 yards. Hollywood Brown, 2 catches, 15 yards. That's your receiving core right there. There's a lot of ramifications, and I'm going to get to the Eagles in a second. There's a lot of ramifications, and we're looking at, when things like this happen, we look at teams, we look at players differently. And let me talk about the Eagles first before I give my conclusion for both teams. The habits that were developed in the regular season was the downfall of the Kansas City Chiefs. The habits that were built in the regular season is the reason why the Philadelphia Eagles are now NFL's or Super Bowl champions. Getting Saquon Barkley, getting someone like Zach Bond, who I think was even a little bit more than Saquon, he was the biggest reason I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are where they are. That Zach Bond acquisition was beautiful and worked to perfection. I mean, he had I think he had an interception this game. Whether we talk about Saquon Barkley and the incredible season that he had, whether we talk about this defense being as vaunted, again, with Zach Bond, Josh Sweat, the exciting white Cooper DeJean, who had a pick 6 on his birthday for the Super Bowl. Shouts out to him. C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You still had Jordan Davis. You had Jalen Carter. Going into this game, it was clear, and I said this, I think, last episode when I gave my I know people are going to say, well, Jalen, you picked the Kansas City Chiefs to win. Like I said, outside of Kansas City Chiefs fans, the only reason why people picked the Kansas City Chiefs is because A, they don't want to see the Philadelphia Eagles succeed, or B, they have Patrick Mahomes. I was on the A side. I just didn't want, being a Commanders fan, being in AFC East, I don't want to see another AFC East team flourish. The only time I'm rooting for an AFC team outside the Commanders is whoever's playing Dallas. That's it. But put all that aside, it was clear who had the better team. In fact, this entire year, regular season, postseason, this entire year, I said that there was two teams that had the clear-cut best rosters in football: the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles. And once the Detroit Lions started getting injury after injury after injury after injury, I said the best roster in football is the Philadelphia Eagles. From Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, Jahan Dotson, getting him from Washington. Like I said, the defense. Top to bottom, there is not a team in the NFL that is better roster-wise than the Philadelphia Eagles. And like I said earlier, you can tell once they got off the bus, from play one to the last play of the game, they left no doubt who the better team was. From intercepting Patrick Mahomes twice to forcing a fumble, again, sacking Patrick Mahomes 3 times, completely owning the line of scrimmage. This was the most frustrated, and it just felt like Patrick Mahomes, while I'm not going to say he lost faith, but it felt like he was lost. Like he just didn't know. He just didn't have an answer. And that was because of the defensive line and the defensive pressure from the Philadelphia Eagles. But all year. And one thing that we've learned is it doesn't matter if it doesn't, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. Just because you have the best roster doesn't mean that you're automatically going to win. I.e., look at the Detroit Lions. But when you have dominant win, I mean, remember, the season looked a little sketchy to start for this. I think they were like 1-2. And the people were saying they should fire Nick Sirianni. People were saying this team is frauds, especially when you look at the roster compared to what the record was. And they ended the season 15-3. Again, dominant win after dominant win, gritty win after gritty win. They had to play the Green Bay Packers. They had to play the Washington Commanders. They had to play the Rams. They played the Baltimore Ravens. They developed good habits. And then, so one thing, the one scary part, or one cautionary thing that I sometimes you can't help it, right? But I think it's very dangerous to try to develop habits in the playoffs. Which is why when Hollywood Brown came back, even though he came back, I think 2 or 3 games before the regular season ended, I was like, yo, you need time to get acclimated with Patrick Mahomes. You didn't have that issue with the Philadelphia Eagles. Everyone was lockstep. They knew what they wanted to do. And it was a complete game from the offense to the defense. Let me talk about Jalen Hurts for a second. The biggest question mark, you can say, surrounding this team and their Super Bowl hopes was Jalen Hurts. The offensive line was incredible. The weapons that he had on the outside and the running back position obviously was incredible. Their defense was arguably the best defense in football. The only question mark was Jalen Hurts. And rightfully so. Jalen Hurts, there are games when Jalen Hurts doesn't look up to snuff. There are games when he looks like the best player in football. But you just don't know what you're going to get with Jalen Hurts. Well, and I will say this. One of the criticisms with Jalen Hurts always goes back, and I've been guilty of this. When you talk about Jalen Hurts, you want to go all the way back to college when he got benched for Tua, even though he doesn't have a national championship. He got benched for Tua, then he goes to Oklahoma, has a pretty good season, has a Heisman caliber season, even though he didn't win, but still. I want to congratulate and shout out Jalen Hurts. I think RG3 said it. Going into the game, he said that if Jalen Hurts wins this game, it puts him on a level above, Josh Allen, above Lamar Jackson, above. He essentially was saying that if Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts is the second best quarterback in the league. I wholeheartedly don't agree. But I will give Jalen Hurts his flowers. We always say that to beat the king, or to be the king, you have to beat the king. Hell, Josh Allen said that after they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the second time in the Super Bowl where Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes. Now, yes, this is also the second time where Jalen Hurts had an incredible defense, and obviously Jalen Hurts isn't on the field the same time Patrick Mahomes is. But this is the second time where Jalen Hurts was arguably the best player on the field in a Super Bowl. And if you remember the first Super Bowl, two plays ended the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts fumble that was recovered for a touchdown, and the pass interference at the end of the game on James Bradbury. If those two plays went differently, we may be talking about a two-time Super Bowl champion. Jalen Hurts doesn't have and isn't one of those quarterbacks that have eye-popping numbers. Even this game, 17 for 22, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those aren't eye-popping numbers. But he made big play when he needed to make big plays, and when he rushed for 72 yards. When a play needed to be made, he 9 times out of 10 made it. Which is why he won the Super Bowl MVP, rightfully so. Saquon Barkley had a good game, but he only had 57 rushing yards. The Kansas City Chiefs did a great job bottling up Saquon Barkley, which led to Jalen Hurts having to be big in big moments. There's a lot of criticism on Jalen Hurts because he does a lot of things good, but he may not do it better than somebody else. Meaning, he's a mobile quarterback, but he's not better than, let's say, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen when it comes to mobility. He's a good passer of the football, but he's not better than Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes in that sense. He's really good at the line of scrimmage, but he's not better than Justin Herbert as far as line of scrimmage, reading the line of scrimmage, or let's say Jared Goff is pretty good at reading the line of scrimmage. Maybe he's not. But what I'm saying is this. Jalen Hurts, there's a lot of criticism that's on Jalen Hurts because he's good, exceptional at a lot of things. But there are people that are better than him at those things. So there's a lot of scrutiny. On top of that, he also has a Super Bowl loss on his belt. And his leadership was in question the year after they went to the Super Bowl, where they lost like 10 or 11 straight games. Even with all that, this is now the second Super Bowl in a row for Jalen Hurts where he was the best player on the field offensively. Because you can talk, I think if you can give the Super Bowl MVP to a unit, I'd give it to the defensive unit, especially the defensive line. But Jalen Hurts he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. And like they said, to be the king, you have to beat the king. And C.J. Stroud wasn't able to outplay Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen wasn't able to outplay Patrick Mahomes. This is the second time in the playoffs that Jalen Hurts faced off against Patrick Mahomes and outplayed him. The first time, 2 plays dictated. This time, left no doubt. It was a complete team win. There were a couple moments in this game where it was clear that these are two different. This year's Kansas City Chiefs and this year's Philadelphia Eagles are in 2 different classes. I could say one was, I believe it was the second interception that Patrick Mahomes threw. He was in his own end zone, and the reason why he threw it outside of it being, inaccurate was because the defensive lineman, I don't remember which one it was, but the defensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles pushed Joe Thuney, who is widely regarded as the MVP for their season. I think that he was named the MVP for the Kansas City Chiefs season. He pushed Joe Thuney so far up that Joe Thuney pushed Joe Thuney into Patrick Mahomes, which caused him to throw an inaccurate pass, which was essentially intercepted by Zach Bond. That was the one play. That was one of the plays where I was like, oh yeah, this is a different caliber. You're playing against, there's a different level. I don't think, even though you can always say, we have to prepare for this. We have to prepare for that. We have to get ready for this. We have to get ready for that. But you never know exactly that feeling until it happens. Meaning you can say, we have to prepare for Tyreek Hill's speed. Or a really good one is, we have to prepare for the cold. That's one of the superpowers that the Buffalo Bills have come to playoff time, or the Kansas City Chiefs have usually come to playoff time. Because they're in cold environments, they want to get home field advantage so that you have to go to them. That's why Miami, every single time in the playoffs, if they don't have home field advantage, 9 times out of 10 they lose. Actually, 10 times out of 10 they lose. You can say we need to prepare for the weather, and we're trying to mentally, physically prepare ourselves. But there's no preparing for 18-degree weather, but the wind chill feels like -3. There is no preparing for that unless you're in it. all we heard all week was the Kansas City Chiefs have to prepare for the physicality that the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line is going to bring. If you don't have anybody in that building, and obviously you have walkthroughs, so you're not going to run hard, you're not going to practice hard. There is no preparing for physicality like that if you're not already doing that, which you're not, because that makes no sense to do that before the Super Bowl. So that was one play where I don't remember the defensive player. I apologize, but he pushed Joe Tooney into Patrick Mahomes, which caused a Zach Bond interception. And then I believe it was 24-0. And they were like, all right, I think the broadcasters, Tom Brady, and I forgot the other dude's name. I apologize. But they were saying, all right, you're already up big. Let's just run the ball, run the clock. And let's just get, that's what they thought the Eagles were going to do. And that probably would have been the smartest thing to do. Jalen Hurts drops back, which was shocking to Tom Brady. He drops back and throws a dime touchdown pass to Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts wasn't touched. He wasn't rushed. He wasn't hurried up. And Devontae Smith was wide open. It just showed that we're looking at while yes, shouts out to the Kansas City Chiefs for everything they've done. Patrick Mahomes has 3 Super Bowls in 5 years now? Or 3 Super Bowls in 5 trips. But this year, we looked at 2 teams that are on 2 completely different levels. And while no, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs played to the best of their ability, I think a lot of that was because they played against a team that was an unmovable object and an unstoppable force that day. Again, shouts out to this Super Bowl, the second Super Bowl in Philadelphia Eagles franchise history, was built throughout the whole regular season. Habits, a lot of scrutiny when we talk about Nick Sirianni going against fans, and some of the antics that we saw. Well, yeah, they were still winning. And you can hate how Nick Sirianni does things. You can say he's not a good coach. You would be lying to yourself, because this is the second Super Bowl Nick Sirianni's been to in, 4 years? And I think he has one of the highest winning percentage as a coach in NFL history. Oh. It was a complete dominant win. And the last thing I'm going to say before I go to my winners and losers of the NFL season, I previewed it a little bit earlier when I said that games like these change how we perceive things. Maybe not as much as the outcome, more so than how we got to the outcome. Jalen Hurts has always been a fringe, let's say, top 10 quarterback. When they give the quarterback ranks, Jalen Hurts is very rare that you hear him closer to 1 than 10. I still don't think he's better than, let's say, the big 4. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. I don't think that. But outside of those four, I don't see. Yes, Jaden Daniels had an incredible season. Yes, CJ Stroud got his team to the playoffs again. Even though he had a terrible playoff game, Justin Herbert got himself to the playoffs again. But I can't say that CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, not Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, as great as he was this year, even Jalen Hurts, even Jaden Daniels, I can't say that they're better than Jalen Hurts. I think that Jalen Hurts has cemented himself as a top 5 quarterback this year. Jared Goff had a great year. I still think Jalen Hurts, he's a Super Bowl champion now. Super Bowl MVP at that point. At that. Sam Darnold had a great year till he didn't. I think the way that we talk about Jalen Hurts has to change. He's a national champion, Super Bowl winner, and a Super Bowl MVP. And mind you, this is his second Super Bowl in I think 4 seasons. The way that we talk, and he dethroned a quote unquote dynasty. I don't know how this team is going to fare next year. Yeah, a lot of their key pieces are on contract, but as we know, the people that aren't, once you win a Super Bowl, once you do something like this, you have to strike when the iron's hot. They want to get paid, and rightfully so. And there are a lot of, like Zach Bond, I keep talking about him because I believe that he was a clear-cut MVP for this team this year. He's I think a free agent. What are they going to do with him? A lot of their defense are free agents. So I don't know A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith contract situation, but I think they're up soon. So obviously that's the biggest challenge with Super Bowl caliber teams, especially when a lot of their good players are on 1-year deals. What are they going to do? But I will say this. There has to be a little bit more respect put on Jalen Hurts' name when we talk about the top tier and pantheon of quarterbacks in the NFL. Again, I understand, but they it's funny when they talk about rankings and everything, and then you throw in Super Bowls. They always it's interesting how they talk about it, right? Because they'll say, "Oh no, the Super Bowl is a team sport or a team accolade." When we talk about Patrick Mahomes, when we talk about Jalen Hurts, or we talk about someone like who else has a Matthew Stafford, and they say, "Well, you don't want to. We can't add on to the Super Bowl because it's a team aspect." But when we talk about Patrick Mahomes, when we talk about Lamar Jackson not getting to one, when we talk to Josh Allen not getting to one, when we talk to talk about Joe Burrow losing one, then it's but they don't have the Super Bowl. It's fickle. But I do think the way that we talk about Jalen Hurts has to change. And I also think the way that we talk about Patrick Mahomes has to change. Hear me out. I have been seated comfortably on the Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT bandwagon. From the success that he's seen this early in his career, it was very hard for me to, even though I'm not taking away from anything that Tom Brady has done in his entire career, but the success that Patrick Mahomes has seen early on in his career, it's hard for me to look at what he's done or what he was doing and say that, while yes, 7 Super Bowls is incredible, but look at Patrick Mahomes is better. That's what I was. I was solely on that train. And I also thought that three-peating, doing something that no other NFL team has ever done, would have been the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, if you will, as far as my argument to why Patrick Mahomes is essentially the GOAT. And it's not only the fact that they didn't complete the three-peat. And don't get me wrong, obviously someone that's never three-peated outside of 2K or Madden, I'm sure that it's incredibly difficult. So, I'm not necessarily taking anything away from anyone, but a lot of it was because of the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me say that first. But this was by far the worst game I've ever seen Patrick Mahomes play. By far. He looked rattled. He did. I mean, obviously that was offensive line as well, but he didn't have much time. He was inaccurate. He missed some easy chippy throws. And as much praise as he has deserved in his career, he deserves some criticism right now. Patrick Mahomes played the worst game I've ever seen him play. And it was just unfortunate that it was in the Super Bowl with the ability to three-peat that was squandered. Yes. Travis Kelce didn't help him at all. Yes, most of Xavier Worthy had a good game, but DeAndre Hopkins didn't help. Juju didn't help. That offensive line was the MVP of the game as to why they lost. But I think that conversation now, the Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT conversation, has to stop. And this is someone that there were times when I was driving the bus. He's not better than Tom Brady. Because I will say it like this. We've seen Tom Brady have bad games. We've seen it. I don't think Tom Brady has ever played as bad in the Super Bowl as Patrick Mahomes played this Super Bowl. Now, mind you, he lost 3 Super Bowls. Remember that. And 2 of them was to the Giants. But at least for now, that whole Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT conversation has to cease, or at least be put on the shelf. Again, games like this, I'm not taking away from anything that Patrick Mahomes has done, but there are ramifications for how you play in games like this. Hell, they kill Josh Allen, they kill Lamar Jackson all the time, and they haven't even got to the Super Bowl. And quiet as it's kept, outside of maybe the first or second year, now I understand that one is a Super Bowl and one is, just a divisional or wild card game, but as bad as Patrick Mahomes played in the Super Bowl, I think that if you compare to what Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, their worst playoff games, I think Patrick Mahomes is the worst. Now, again, for all the people that's killing me in the comment, I get it. One is in the Super Bowl, 2 are not. But when you look at when you put up their worst games in the playoffs, I don't think that Lamar Jackson has ever played this bad in the playoffs. Neither has Josh Allen. Understand 2 of them have not made a Super Bowl yet. I get that. And I'm not just throwing away Patrick Mahomes. But what I'm saying is, we have to really slow down on that Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT talk. Let me say again, congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles for winning the Super Bowl. Much congratulations to you. With the season over at this point, Philadelphia Eagles are hoisting their Super Bowl trophy. It allows you to kind of have kind of really think about the totality of the season since it is now over. And you have some winners of the whole season and some losers. Now, obviously, the biggest winner is the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, the biggest loser is the Kansas City Chiefs because, they lost Super Bowl. So outside of the Eagles and the Chiefs in their Super Bowl, I want to talk about some winners and some losers. And I first want to start with the winners. This was a eye-opening year for a lot of teams, a lot of people, in a very positive way. I think the first winner has to be the running back market. When you see how integral Saquon Barkley was to the Philadelphia Eagles, when you see how integral Derrick Henry was to the Baltimore Ravens, when you see how integral Josh Jacobs was to the Green Bay Packers, when you see how integral Aaron Jones was to the Minnesota Vikings, all we've been talking about for the longest is how the running back position is dying because the NFL is turning to a pass-happy league. We've just been talking about it dying and that how it's I'm not going to say becoming obsolete, but because the running back has been such a depreciating position, it's been hard to that's one of the biggest reasons why Derrick Henry is not a Dallas Cowboy, because they don't value the running back position like they would maybe the wide receiver or obviously the quarterback. And while, yes, I still think that it is a depreciating asset because the running back takes the second most punishment on the field next to the linemen. But again, Saquon Barkley I think if you total his regular season and his postseason, he has the most rushing yards by a player in NFL history for one season. Derrick Henry almost cracked 2,000 yards. I think he would be the first player in NFL history to ever, he didn't do it, but if he were to do it, I think he'd be the first player in NFL history to ever rush for 2,000 yards more than one season. Again, Josh Jacobs was the key for the Green Bay Packers. It was Joe Mixon and how important he was for the Texans. Hell, Kareem Hunt had a resurging year for the Kansas City Chiefs. From a market that has been dead, I think that the running back market saw a huge win this year because of just how good it was, how important it was, and just some of the records that were able to be broken or almost be broken by running backs. Saquon Barkley is probably the biggest reason why the Eagles got to the Super Bowl, because they rode him a lot of times. And on top of that, man, it was just a great year for running backs. So I think that one major winner is the running back market. Even the teams that didn't have a running back, you saw it was clear as day how hampered they were because they don't have a running back that is dependable compared to the teams that do. So I think the running back market was a huge win this year. And, the resurgence, I'll say, of the running back market was a huge win. Another huge winner, I'll say it, was Josh Allen. As much as I feel that Lamar Jackson deserved the MVP over Josh Allen, I still think that Josh Allen had an MVP caliber season. Again, remember, the narrative around Josh Allen in the Buffalo Bills was this is going to be a down year. When you see a lot of the key pieces that they lost, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball, and they were key pieces. Like Stephon Diggs is a number one receiver on 29 other teams. So to lose someone like that, to lose key defensive pieces and then replace them with not household names, you thought that this was going to be a down year. And while I'm not going to be the one to continue to push this narrative that he was playing with nobody, I think that James Cook is a great running back. I think that Amari Cooper, even though he played half a season, I think that he's a really good wide receiver. I think that Keon Coleman is going to turn into a really good wide receiver. I think that they have one of the best 1-2 punches at the tight end possession when you talk about Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. I think defensively they have one of the best defenses in football when everyone's healthy. However, the narrative that it's going to be a down year for the Buffalo Bills was roaring strong going into the season. Well, Josh Allen showed them. I'm not going to say he completely put the team on his back because he had help, but what I will say is the play of Josh Allen elevated someone like Shakur, elevated someone like a Keon Coleman when he was healthy, elevated someone like a James Cook, elevated Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. His play elevated the Buffalo Bills to the AFC Championship. Something that going into the season, I didn't think was possible. Again, I do think that Lamar Jackson deserved the MVP this year. But I do think that Josh Allen had an MVP caliber year. And I think that the narrative sort of changed around him. Now, I think that there's legitimate people that will sit here and say, oh, no, he's the second best quarterback and it's not even close. I may not disagree. I may not agree, but you can't. Josh Allen was a big winner this year, winning the MVP, leading his team to the AFC Championship, especially after the offseason that they had, losing the many pieces that they had. Sean McDermott, he was at question. Josh Allen had a win season. So, yeah. Another win is Jamar Chase. Remember how loud the offseason was for the Cincinnati Bengals? We're going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals as a whole in a second. But remember how loud it was when we were talking about T. Higgins' contract and Trey Hendrickson's contract and Jamar Chase's contract? Jamar Chase was he was holding out because he wanted more money, and rightfully so. He considered himself the best wide receiver in football. It was between him or Justin Jefferson, and the Bengals were not trying to pay him what he felt he was owed. Well, what did Jamar Chase do? Jamar Chase, there's two ways you can do this. You can hold out and, sorry for my language, half-ass and not play to your best. Or you can do what Jamar Chase did. Go out there and not only leave any doubt who, at least this year, the best wide receiver is, but go out and get the Triple Crown. Most receiving yards, most receiving receptions, and most touchdowns in the league from a wide receiver. Jamar Chase had one of the best singular seasons a receiver has ever had. I don't know what's going to happen with the Cincinnati Bengals this offseason because a lot of the questions that they pushed to this season, or they pushed down the road, is here now. I don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins. I don't know what's going to happen with Jamar Chase, but I will say this. Jamar Chase has left no doubt that you should pay them. If you had any doubt last year, in last offseason, if they should pay him, he has left no doubt that he should be paid. I do think that who is throwing you the ball, especially for a wide receiver, changed a lot. So I understand the people that still say that Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football. He just doesn't have a Joe Burrow to throw in the ball. I get that. But if we talk about numbers, Jamar Chase has a huge winner this year because he left no doubt that if you were ever even thinking about not paying me, here's a reason why you should. Big winner. Another winner is the Washington Commanders. From a team that was projected to be second to last in the in the NFC East, that had a rookie quarterback, that had a new head coach, that had new ownership, that had a bunch of veteran pieces that they just pulled together to go from uncertainty. And I think they had 4 wins last year? Uncertainty to be a game away from the Super Bowl is a win. Now, yes, as a Commanders fan, I would hope that they'd win the Super Bowl and at least make the Super Bowl. But again, even as a Commanders fan, and for people that think I'm joking, as a Commanders fan, I'm true to this, my guy. I didn't even think that this team, at least this year, was capable of having the season that they had. I didn't think this team was capable. And I knew Jaden Daniels was good. I was excited getting Jaden Daniels out of LSU. I didn't think that he was going to statistically have arguably the best rookie season in NFL history. On top of the incredible year, yes, they didn't make the Super Bowl. Yes, they lost to the Eagles in the NFC Championship. There is a different level of hope. There's a different level of excitement that is around the DC area, that's around this Commanders team. Now you have people that once wasn't a free agent destination at all. Now you're hearing people are excited and want to go to the Commanders. The Commanders have some of the most cap space in the NFL going into this offseason. So while no, they didn't win, this was a huge win for them this year. They're one of the biggest winners of the year because they have the quarterback of the future. It looks like the ownership knows what they're doing. And again, a team that was thought to be second to last in the NFC East was a game away from making the first Super Bowl since 1991-1992 season. The Washington Commanders were a huge, huge winner. And my last winner is Lamar Jackson. To have the season that he had, being the first player in NFL history to rush or pass for over 4,000 yards, rush for over 900 yards, to have, I think, the 4th best quarterback or QBR for the season, to have, I think, the 4th best touchdown to interception ratio, or maybe 3rd best, something like that, to have the season that he had, and then you remember, how long it took for him to get picked in the draft and his scouting report. It's hard for you to say that Lamar Jackson is not a winner. Yes, it's crazy to me that with the season that he had, he didn't walk away with any awards in the NFL award show, but Lamar Jackson in my opinion, has left no doubt who I think the second best quarterback is. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes he didn't have a great season, and he had a terrible Super Bowl, but we're still talking about a 3-time champion right there. And even with a down year, still made it to the Super Bowl. But Lamar Jackson is a huge winner for me. He had, in my opinion, undoubtedly the best season for a quarterback. And while I do think he should have won the MVP, he at least landed on my winners list. Because, again, I know a lot of people take away from his success in his year because he had Derrick Henry and 9 Pro Bowlers and this stuff and this and that. But Lamar Jackson had one of the most. I mean, he was so good that he got Zay Flowers, who was the first wide receiver in Ravens franchise history to make the Pro Bowl. That's how good Lamar Jackson was. So my winners is the running back market, especially Saquon Barkley, Josh Allen, Jamar Chase, the Washington Commanders, and Lamar Jackson. Those are my winners for this NFL season. Obviously, there are a lot of great teams, a lot of great players, a lot of great storylines, but those are my 5 winners. With some winners, we got to have some losers. And I think there is not a bigger loser in this entire season than the New York Giants. Not even because of being one of the worst teams in football this year. Not even because you don't know how to lose right. You had the opportunity to get the number 1 overall pick, and Drew Lock turned into prime Peyton Manning. But you wanted to base your whole future around Daniel Jones. So much so that you were okay with letting Saquon Barkley not only walk out your door for nothing, but go to a divisional rival in the Philadelphia Eagles. And not only did they win a Super Bowl, he was the biggest reason why they won the Super Bowl. Not saying, yes, shouts out to Jalen Hurts for winning the Super Bowl MVP, but at least getting there, the Philadelphia Eagles rode the back of Saquon Barkley more times than not. And because you wanted to cut corners, because you wanted to preserve, and you wanted to have Daniel Jones be the face of your franchise, you couldn't sleep at night thinking you had to pay Saquon Barkley what he felt he was owed. And now you look, Daniel Jones isn't even on the team anymore. Saquon Barkley is not on the team and was a key part in a Super Bowl champion. And your future is looking, yes, you have Malik Neighbors. Yes, you still have Dexter Lawrence, but your future is looking mighty bleak. Which is even crazier because even though Daniel Jones is Daniel Jones, he's on a better franchise right now. So yeah, I'm blaming the Giants for why the Eagles are Super Bowl champions now. I don't think the Eagles would be Super Bowl champion if they didn't have Saquon Barkley on the team. And they wouldn't have had Saquon Barkley on the team if the Giants just paid the man. But hey, the Giants are being the Giants had 2 good years, man. In recent memory, 2 good years. And even in that, their regular season weren't great in neither one of them. It's just Eli Manning had, and the defense had an exceptional playoff run. But you're a loser this year. As much as I heap praise on Lamar Jackson, as much as I heap praise on Derrick Henry, and as much as it seems like I heap praise on the Baltimore Ravens, they have landed on my losers list. And when I talk about them, I give the caveat, the definition of insanity. There's no way that you can there's no way, and it's almost insane at this point, to think that the Baltimore Ravens are a Super Bowl caliber team, or is a Super Bowl caliber team, when they continuously get in their own way. They continuously cost themselves games, chances at Super Bowls. I think these last 2 years, let's say 3 years, these last 3 years, the Baltimore Ravens has been one of the best teams in football. I think that they've had one of the best rosters. I think that Lamar Jackson has been incredible. I think that they've been great. But let's be more, the last 2 years, they have cost themselves a chance at a Super Bowl contention, because I think that they would have beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl. And I think that they cost themselves at least a Super Bowl appearance this year. Whether we talk about Zay Flowers' fumble, whether we talk about Mark Andrews' fumble and his 2-point conversion drop. I talk about this all the time, man. The Super Bowl window doesn't always stay open. Yes, Lamar Jackson is great. And yes, I do think they have a shot with Lamar Jackson being this good and Derrick Henry being this good. But they continuously beat themselves. And this is yet another year where they suffer the same type of fate. They lose not because they weren't the better team. They lost because they self-inflicted wounds. So as much as I love Lamar Jackson, he didn't play great the first half of the Bills game. He didn't play great against the Chiefs last year in the AFC Championship. Now, you can say it's because the coaching staff abandoned the run more. The Baltimore Ravens were the number one, I think this 2 years in a row, they were the number one rushing team. And this is 2 years in a row that they abandoned the rush for whatever reason. I can't keep heaping praise. I can keep heaping praise on Lamar Jackson, on Derrick Henry, but in the same breath, I can't keep saying that this is a Super Bowl caliber team if they continue to prove me wrong. So this is yet another year where I don't know if they would have beat the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think that they matched up better with the Philadelphia Eagles than the Kansas City Chiefs did. And I think that they were a better team than the Bills. They were a better overall team, especially offensively, than the Chiefs this year. Yet and still, if was a fifth, that we'd all be drunk. It doesn't matter because they beat themselves yet again. So a big loser again is the Baltimore Ravens. Another wasted season from Lamar Jackson, a wasted Derrick Henry season, and a wasted season where you have a Super Bowl caliber roster. Mind you, your top two offensive linemen possibly could leave this offseason because they're free agents. And you don't have much cap space. You need to figure out what you're going to do with Mark Andrews. You need to figure out what you're going to do with Marlon Humphreys. You had an opportunity. You had multiple opportunities for years now. And it seems like every single year you find a way to mess it up yourself. So you have to be a loser in that. I'm sorry. Lamar Jackson had a great year. Hell, Lamar Jackson's in my winners category. Derrick Henry was featured in my winners. But the Ravens as a whole, and the fact of as great as a season Lamar Jackson had, as great as a season Derrick Henry had, you didn't even touch the AFC Championship? Nah, you're a loser. Another loser is the Chicago Bears. Not solely the complete Bears team, but the coaching staff and how they handled Caleb Williams. Number one overall pick. It really started before that. You bring in a coach, or you have a coach that has shown that he is not good with coaching or understanding how to coach a mobile quarterback. You bring him in, and it just looks... You essentially, I'm not saying they did, but you essentially could have ruined the career of Caleb Williams for just how bad of a coaching staff you put around him. It's all about stability, right? Good stability. I think he had, 2 or 3 offensive coordinators And now 2 head coaches. He will have 3 head coaches in 2 years. Like, that is tough. That is tough. For a rookie, let alone a number 1 overall pick that had legit aspirations. You're looking at this man as the savior of your franchise, and you can't even get the coaching staff right. And I think one of the biggest reasons why they're losers is because everyone screamed out before the draft, yo, I don't think your coaching staff is correct for the type of quarterback that you're about to draft. Look, as great as Jaden Daniels was, there's a reason why he was the number 2 quarterback picked. Caleb Williams was that in college and still could be looked at as a generational talent. But football is the ultimate team sport. That also includes coaching staff. If you don't have the right coaching staff, then what? Yeah. The way they could have completely ruined this man's future. I hope they didn't. But we need to see what happens with, the new coaching staff that was brought in. So, but at least this year it was ugly. Mind you, they had an incredible roster. You had DeAndre Swift, you had Keenan Allen, you have DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, great defensive pieces. And they were terrible this year. Big loser. Another loser is the Jets. I think, honestly, they are the biggest loser of this year. And I told you guys this before the season started. There is not a team that has more expectations on their shoulders than the Jets. When you have an aging quarterback, when you have an unproven coach, when you have a defense that is supposed to be vaunted, is supposed to be stout, but continues to get older, the time is now. And I said this. I said, if they don't meet expectations, you're going to see a lot of changes. Well, what do you know? Just this year alone, just this season, we've seen Devontae Adams go from the Raiders to the Jets. We saw 2 different coaches. We've seen multiple different offensive coordinators, multiple different defensive coordinators. The defense looked god-awful. I mean, what do you expect? You had a defensive-minded coach, and they looked really good. You fired him, then they look awful. Aaron Rodgers didn't look great. The whole offense didn't look great. And now, when you look, they said they're already going to move off Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. What do you expect was going to happen? Look, I told you this. When teams don't meet expectations, they start to point fingers like, all right, why did we not meet expectations? And you're also talking about a team that is desperate for success. Yeah, I don't think there was a bigger loser in this entire NFL season than the Jets. It's crazy when people are saying that the Jets were better off with Zach Wilson than they were with Aaron Rodgers. That's another. I don't think. No, we don't know. We'll obviously see what happens next year because it doesn't look like he's going to retire. But I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback with the caliber that is Aaron Rodgers. I don't think I've ever seen a career end the way that it's ended with a quarterback that good. Like, it is ugly that was an ugly year, ugly 2 years because obviously he tore his Achilles. 4 plays in 2 years ago. This was an ugly season, and they were huge. I think they're the biggest losers of the year, honestly. I know I still have one more loser, but in totality, I think the biggest loser is the Jets. Just look at the excitement and look at the hope that they had going into the season compared to where they are right now. Obviously, the season's over, but there's a lot of. This was a nasty season for this franchise. So, yeah. And another loser, And this is the last thing I'm going to say before we go. I talked about this a lot. I said that winning and having good franchise caliber players allows a team to turn a blind eye to a lot of things that they shouldn't essentially turn a blind eye to. I said that you can put cologne on something that smells bad, and while it still will smell bad, it'll smell a tad bit better because of the cologne. I have said for a while now that the Cincinnati Bengals is a poverty franchise. And people looked at me crazy because they went to a Super Bowl a couple years ago, because they have Joe Burrow, because they have T. Higgins, because they have Jamar Chase, because they have Trey Hendrickson, because they have Sam Hubbard. How do they have that many good players? How did they make the Super Bowl, but they are a poverty franchise? Well, the Cincinnati Bengals became the first team in NFL history to have the league leader in reception yards and passing yards, and Joe Burrow. Passing yards and passing touchdowns in Joe Burrow, the Triple Crown winner in Jamar Chase, and the sacks leader in Trey Hendrickson. This is the first team in NFL history to have all three of those on one team and still not make the playoffs. This team is going to look very different next year as well, because I don't think T. Higgins is coming back. We still got to see what Jamar Chase is going to look like. But this team, I think they took out a loan to pay Joe Burrow. So what do you think they're about to do with Jamar Chase? My last loser is the Cincinnati Bengals. They squandered an all-time year from Joe Burrow and from Jamar Chase and didn't even make the playoffs. Do you understand how bad of an organization you have to be to have one of the historic season from three players in a good way and still not make the playoffs? Do you know how the Cincinnati Bengals probably had the worst, one of, if not the worst defenses in football, and Trey Hendrickson still led the league in sacks, and they still didn't make the playoffs. So for people that said, Jalen, what do you mean they're a poverty franchise? They just made history in the worst way possible. As much as I've give praise and credit to Lamar Jackson, and as much as we've given praise and credit to Josh Allen and Josh Allen winning the MVP, I said this all year. If they had a better record, Joe Burrow would be the clear-cut MVP. He had a better season than Lamar Jackson. He had a better season than Josh Allen. The difference is his overall team wasn't that good. Not Jamar Chase, though, because Jamar Chase had probably, if their record was better, I think Jamar Chase would have had a good shot of winning the Offensive Player of the Year, even over Saquon Barkley, because you could have said, well, Saquon Barkley, he could have had the regular season rushing record. He just didn't go for it. However, Jamar Chase, their team would have been in the playoffs, and he had a triple crown. And the last player to win a triple crown was Cooper Kupp. He won the Offensive Player of the Year. Well, how are you going to give it to Jamar Chase if all that triple crownness didn't even get you in the playoffs? How are you going to give the MVP to Joe Burrow when all that greatness didn't get you in the playoffs? How are you going to give Trey Hendrickson Defensive Player of the Year when all of those sacks didn't get you in the playoffs? I said and I've been saying that they are a poverty franchise. They are. Plain and simple. My losers this year have been the New York Giants, the Baltimore Ravens, the Chicago Bears, Cincinnati Bengals, and the New York Jets. I was going to talk about Dalton Knecht, but no. I do want to say congratulations again to the Philadelphia Eagles for winning this year's Super Bowl. And there you have it. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. If you like the content, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, subscribe. It definitely means a lot. Also, for all my DSP listeners, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you're listening to this luscious voice of mine, please follow, please subscribe. No platform is more important than the other. So for all my DSP listeners, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Please subscribe, please follow. Also, from my social media followers and social media family, Instagram, TikTok, please follow. That's probably where we can go back and forth. That's probably the quickest way to get to me. You get reels, we got stories. We'll talk about it. Again, it's TikTok, if you still have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of it. Please follow. It means a lot. Until next time, much love.